Imagine for a moment that it is a Tuesday evening around 6:45 p.m. You are sitting in your car, stuck in that soul-crushing suburban traffic that seems to get worse every single year. You are exhausted. Your back hurts from sitting at a desk all day, and your brain feels like it has been through a blender after back-to-back Zoom meetings. You look at the passenger seat and see a bag of cold takeout because you were too tired to even think about preheating the oven. You are heading home to a beautiful house in a quiet, safe neighborhood with a manicured lawn and a top-rated elementary school nearby. You and your spouse are both working professionals. You are pulling in a combined household income of $130,000 a year. On paper, you are winning. You are in the top 25% of American households. You are exactly where the American dream told you that you should be. You did the degrees, you got the corporate jobs, you got married, and you bought the house. But as you sit there in traffic, you feel a cold knot of anxiety in your stomach. You are thinking about the grocery bill from last night that was $60 higher than usual. You are thinking about the unexpected repair for the HVAC system that you had to put on a high-interest credit card because your savings account is sitting at a big fat zero. You are thinking about how you and your spouse are essentially passing ships in the night, only seeing each other for a few tired, stressed hours before collapsing into bed just to do it all over again tomorrow. You keep asking yourself the same haunting question: if we make so much money, why does it feel like we are constantly drowning? Why does a six-figure income feel like poverty? If this sounds like your life, I want you to know that you are not crazy, and you are certainly not alone. You have been sold a story, a mathematical lie that has been the biggest financial bait-and-switch in modern history. We have been told that two incomes are always better than one. It seems like a simple math problem, right? If one person can support a family on $50,000, then two people making $50,000 each should be able to support that same family and have an extra $50,000 left over for wealth, travel, and total security. But that is not what happened. What actually happened is the two-income trap, a phenomenon discovered by Elizabeth Warren back when she was a bankruptcy law professor studying over 2,000 families who had lost everything. What she found was genuinely shocking. Having two incomes did not make families more secure, it made them more vulnerable. Families with two working parents were actually more likely to file for bankruptcy than single-income families from a generation ago. You are working twice as hard, bringing home two paychecks, and yet you are more likely to lose your home than your grandparents were. This is not a personal failure of your budgeting skills. This is a systemic trap, and today we are going to tear it apart so you can finally see the bars of the cage you are standing in. To understand how we got here, we have to travel back to 1970. I want you to picture a typical middle-class family from that era. In 1970, only about 43% of women were in the workforce. Most households ran on a single primary breadwinner, and the other parent stayed home to manage the house and the kids. Now, modern logic tells us those families must have been struggling, right? Wrong. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that single income was actually enough. A median single-income family in 1970 could afford a median-priced home by spending only about 25% of their income. They could afford health care, a reliable car, and they could put their kids in a decent public school regardless of which neighborhood they lived in. But most importantly, that 1970 family had something that you have completely lost. They had a backup plan. They had financial margin. If the dad lost his job or got sick, the stay-at-home mom could enter the workforce to bridge the gap. That second potential income was a massive insurance policy, an emergency reserve that stayed in the garage until it was needed. Now, look at your life in 2024. In over 60% of married couples with kids, both parents are working full-time. We have taken that emergency backup plan, that second income, and we have turned it into our default operating mode. We have already played our best card just to get to the starting line. And despite making significantly more money than our parents did, even when you adjust for inflation, we are somehow worse off. Why? Because the cost of being middle class has exploded in a way that is almost impossible to keep up with. Since 1970, the price of a median home has literally doubled relative to inflation. Healthcare spending per household has surged by over 600%. Childcare, which was barely an expense in 1970 because someone was home, now costs the average family over $11,000 per year per child. In some cities, you are looking at $20,000 to $30,000 just to have someone watch your kids while you go to work to pay for the childcare. Education costs have skyrocketed by over 1,200%. Every single dollar of that second income has been swallowed whole by these massive, fixed costs. You didn't spend a second paycheck on fancy yachts or designer clothes. You spent it on a mortgage in a zip code with a good school, on health insurance premiums, and on daycare. You traded your financial flexibility for a baseline middle-class existence that now requires two incomes just to survive. Think about the arms race for housing. In the 1970s, families bid on houses based on what one person could earn. But once two-income households became the norm, everyone suddenly had twice the purchasing power. When everyone has more money to spend on the same limited supply of houses, what happens? The prices get bid up. If everyone has two incomes, then two incomes become the baseline requirement to buy a home. You aren't ahead because you have two paychecks, you are just keeping up with the neighbor who also has two paychecks. This is especially true when it comes to education. We all want the best for our kids, right? Since public schools are funded by property taxes, the best schools are always in the most expensive neighborhoods. So, parents use their two incomes to outbid each other for houses in those specific school districts. This is what Elizabeth Warren calls the bidding war for educational opportunity. You aren't just paying for four walls and a roof, you are paying a massive, 30-year mortgage that acts as a hidden tuition for your kid's elementary school. Once you sign that mortgage, the trap snaps shut. You are locked in. You cannot go back to one income even if you want to, because your fixed costs are sized for two people working full-time. The single-income family of 1970 had resilience. They had breathing room. If life hit them with a curveball, they could adjust. But the modern two-income family is like a car running at 100 miles per hour with no oil in the engine. Everything looks fine as long as the road is flat and the weather is perfect. But the moment you hit a bump, a job loss, a medical crisis, a child with special needs, or an aging parent who needs care, the whole engine explodes. You have no reserves. You have no plan B because your plan B is already working 40 hours a week at the office. This is why 40% of American adults cannot cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money. And many of those people are making six figures. They aren't broke because they are lazy or stupid. They are broke because they are standing in a trap where their expenses have expanded to consume every single cent of their combined earnings. They are one transmission repair or one bad performance review away from a total financial collapse. In the next part of this script, we are going to look at the hidden math that the bank won't tell you. We are going to calculate exactly how much that second income is actually worth after taxes, childcare, and what I call exhaustion spending. You might be shocked to find out you are working for less than $1 an hour. But more importantly, I'm going to show you the one income foundation strategy to break the trap, reclaim your flexibility, and finally start building real wealth instead of just treading water. Alright, so we just spent a lot of time talking about the history of this trap and how we got here. We talked about how the houses got bigger, the schools got more expensive, and the safety net of the 1970s just evaporated. But now, I want to get into the nitty-gritty. I want to show you the actual math that is happening behind the scenes in your bank account, because this is where the bait and switch really becomes obvious. If you have ever looked at your combined income and thought, there is no way we are this broke, this next section is going to be your wake-up call. Let's look at the hidden math of that second income. Let's take a couple, we'll call them David and Aliana. David makes $70,000 a year, and Aliana makes $50,000. On their tax return, they see that big beautiful number, $120,000. They feel rich. But let's look at what actually happens to Aliana's $50,000 paycheck. First, we have to talk about Uncle Sam. Because of how progressive tax brackets work in the United States, Aliana's income isn't taxed at the starting rate. Since David is already filling up the lower tax brackets with his $70,000, Aliana's $50,000 gets stacked right on top. This means her income is hit with the highest marginal tax rates from the very first dollar. By the time you factor in federal taxes, state taxes, and payroll taxes, nearly 35% of her check is gone before she even sees it. That $50,000 is now down to about $32,000 in actual take-home pay. But we are just getting started. If David and Aliana have 2 kids, they need someone to watch them while they are at the office. In most American cities, quality daycare is going to run you at least $15,000 per year per child. For 2 kids, that is $30,000. Do the math with me. Elena's take-home pay was $32,000, and daycare just took $30,000 of it. She has worked 2,000 hours this year, and she has exactly $2,000 left to show for it. Now, add in the cost of her commute. Between gas, insurance, the extra maintenance on a second car, and the depreciation that comes with driving 40 miles a day, she is easily spending another $5,000 to $8,000 a year just to get to the job that is paying for the daycare. At this point, Aliana isn't just working for free, she is actually paying for the privilege of having a job. She is missing the bedtime stories, she is missing the school plays, and she is grinding through traffic every single day just to put the household in a deeper financial hole. And then there is the invisible cost that no one talks about, the exhaustion tax. When both David and Aliana get home at 7 p.m., they are physically and mentally spent. The dishwasher is full, the laundry is piled up, and the fridge is empty. They don't have the energy to meal prep or scrub the floors. So, they pay for convenience. They order Uber Eats 3 times a week because they are too tired to cook. They hire a cleaning service once every 2 weeks because their weekends are already packed with errands. They pay for a premium lawn service because David hasn't seen a Saturday morning where he wasn't catching up on emails. These exhaustion expenses can easily add up to another $7,000 to $10,000 a year. When you add it all up, the taxes, the childcare, the cars, and the convenience, that $50,000 second income might net the family exactly $0. Or worse, it might be costing them money. But here is the psychological trap: the bank doesn't see this math. When David and Aliana go to buy a house, the bank looks at that $120,000 gross income and says, "Congratulations. You qualify for a $500,000 mortgage." And David and Aliana think, well, if the bank says we can afford it, we must be fine. They sign the papers, they move in, and suddenly they are locked into a lifestyle that requires both of them to work full-time until they are 65 just to keep the lights on. They have no margin for error. They are operating at 100% capacity with 0 reserves. They are like a car running with no oil in the engine. Everything looks fine until you hit one single bump, and then the whole thing shatters. So, how do you break the cycle? How do you escape a trap that feels like it's built into the very fabric of modern life? It starts with a radical strategy called the One Income Foundation. This is not about one person quitting their job tomorrow. This is about a total shift in how you view your money. Most families treat both incomes as permanent and guaranteed. They build their fixed costs, the mortgage, the car payments, the insurance, around the assumption that both paychecks will show up every single month for 30 years. That is a dangerous gamble. The alternative is to structure your life so that your must-pay bills, your non-negotiable monthly expenses, can be covered by only one of your incomes. The second income then becomes your superpower. You use it for things that are discretionary, saving for retirement, paying off the house early, investing in stocks, or taking a vacation. The critical difference is that if the second income disappears tomorrow, you might have to cancel the vacation, but you won't lose the house. You won't go bankrupt. You have preserved your flexibility. You have bought back your optionality. Think about how much power that gives you. If one partner hates their job, they can quit and find something better without worrying about how to pay the mortgage next month. If a parent gets sick, one of you can step back and be a caregiver without the whole financial structure collapsing. Every dollar you invest from that second income is like buying a minute of your future freedom. Within 5 to 10 years of living this way, something incredible happens. Your investments start generating their own income. Compounding takes over. And suddenly, you have the genuine financial security that you thought 2 incomes would give you in the first place. You are no longer 2 job losses away from a crisis. You are building real wealth while your neighbors are just treading water. Now, we have to be honest here. There are some things this data doesn't tell us, some critical gaps in the research that we need to acknowledge. First off, this entire study is focused on dual-income married couples. But what about the single parents out there? They don't have a second income to fall into a trap, but they are still facing that same 600% increase in healthcare and 1200% increase in education costs. They are facing the same trap without any of the backup. The sources also don't really touch on the remote work revolution. Does working from home fix the trap because you've cut the commute and the exhaustion spending? It might, but the data hasn't caught up to our post-pandemic world yet. And finally, we have to talk about student loans. While the sources mention that education costs have exploded, they don't fully dive into the crushing weight of a $1,000 a month student loan payment as a permanent fixed cost that families are carrying for decades. I know this is a lot to take in, and you probably have some questions. People often ask me, if we make so much, why does the bank say we're fine? You have to remember, the bank is in the business of selling debt. They don't care if you are stressed. They don't care if you have $0 for retirement. They only care if you can make the payment today. You have to be your own risk manager. Another question I get is, isn't it better to have 2 people earning just in case one gets laid off? Isn't that diversification? The answer is, only if you don't need both. If your lifestyle requires both incomes, you haven't diversified your risk, you have doubled it. Because now, you have 2 people who could get laid off, and either one of those events will ruin you. Real security is having 2 incomes but living like you only have one. Finally, people ask, does this mean one of us has to stay home? Absolutely not. This isn't about gender roles or who stays home with the kids. It's about margin. It's about not letting your expenses expand to consume your entire life. Whether you both work or not, the goal is to keep your must-pay bills low enough that you aren't a prisoner to your desk. The 2-income trap is a game where the rules were changed while we were busy working. We traded our flexibility for bigger houses and the appearance of prosperity. But cash flow isn't security, and appearances aren't wealth. 2 incomes aren't better than one if they are already spent before the check even clears. The families who are actually winning aren't the ones earning the most. They are the ones who refuse to let their expenses consume their freedom. They are the ones who kept their backup plan in reserve instead of spending it on a fancy zip code. You can earn your way out of a lot of problems, but you can't earn your way out of a trap you don't even know you are in. Now you know the truth. You see the math. The only question left is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to keep running on that treadmill, or are you going to step off and build a life that is actually secure? The choice is yours. If this deep dive changed the way you look at your paycheck, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. We're going to keep challenging the status quo and showing you how to build a life with real margin and real freedom. I'll see you in the next one.